Once Bieber was in, it only took a year and a half to land a deal with Usher and L.A. Reid. Braun and Bieber are an interesting team, and it's unclear which one motivates the other more. They're both so ambitious and so hyper that they seem to look at Justin's fame as a continual baseball game in the ninth inning. Nothing makes them happier than when someone compares Bieber to Michael Jackson, his idol. Michael's my inspiration, and I want to emulate his career as much as possible, says Bieber. When he died, I couldn't even believe it. I was like, wow, he's gone. I didn't even get to meet him. I was so sad. Bieber is focused on not falling into the same traps as Jackson. He's totally against drugs. Are you curious about cutting off your finger? He asks when I ask him if he wants to experiment. Do you want to know what that feels like? To me, taking drugs is the same type of thing. In the end, all that happens is you get hurt by it. After IHOP, Bieber pilots the Range Rover toward his vocal coach's studio, where he does a lot of Dougieing in front of a mirror, as well as some sort of odd dance that makes him look like a Benihana chef. I'm cooking, he yelps. Ninja moves, I'm making food. The studio is where Bieber is happiest. Justin really cares about his music, and he just wants people to give it a chance, says Braun. He wants to earn the respect of what he thinks are his peers, even if they're not, because they're older than him. Bieber's coach, Jan Smith, aka Mama Jan, a no-nonsense blonde with a small dog in tow, appears, waving a hand to call him in, though he stops to play with her dog first. Bieber has a dog, Sammy, that he doesn't see as much as he'd like. But now when I show up, he runs to my grandma and not to me, says Bieber. He then sticks his bottom lip out and makes the cutest pouty face ever seen on a male. Come over here, Mr. Danceaholic, says Mama Jan, and Bieber follows her into the recording booth where he sits at a console. His fingers flying all over the console keys, he starts off with some drum beats and then layers a Spanish guitar and some hi-hats before jumping into the vocal booth to perform some lyrics that he wrote down on his iPhone. We're providing him with creative time instead of having writers put it on him, Jan says. This allows him to be part of his process. Not all artists have that. In the booth, I got a big hole in my heart, baby, he croons. I loved you from the start. As soon as the mic is off, he goes, swag, swag. When it's time for vocal training, Bieber takes off his gigantic black diamond tags, then drops for 20 push-ups to warm up his chest. When guys start going through puberty, the testosterone kicks in, which is what makes vocal cords thicker. So we've been working on getting Justin's high end back, those real clean high notes, says Jan. All of a sudden, on his last tour, his voice started to change. He's got a nice tone to his voice now, a good texture, but it doesn't sound like what his fans think he sounds like. As he starts a series of scales, Jan nods approvingly. I think he'll get 4 octaves eventually, says Jan. He's still young, and he's got a long, lean muscle aperture. Anything past 3 is just gravy. She turns to him. You've got 3.2 octaves now. You said 3.3 clean yesterday, he says. Well, it's the best shape you've been in for a while, she says. I'm gonna get more octaves than Usher, swag, says Bieber. Did you know that Usher held the longest note ever in a Broadway show? Oh, that's Barbra Streisand, actually. She holds the record for the longest note ever recorded, says Jan. 18 seconds in A Star Is Born. Bieber snickers a little. How do you know she didn't punch in? Well, says Jan, back then it was analog. Bieber goes to leave, but then stops in front of the door jamb where there's a bunch of lines in pencil beginning a couple years ago and the last one about a week ago. This is the growth of the Bieber. It's okay, maybe 3 or 4 inches. He pulls his body up straight. Am I taller? He asks, about 4 or 5 times as Jan swipes a pencil over his head. He whips around to inspect it. A whole ½ inch, could it be? This is amazing. I think there's something going on there, says Jan, trying to make the addition or non-addition of height less of a big deal. It's your hair. The hair of the Biebs is a whole article in itself. It's a pleasing hue made up of all the colors found in hay, and as luxurious in person as it appears on screen. The hairdo-ness of it, with the bangs hanging low on his forehead, seems to bother him a little, and one of the members of his team says he's been talking lately about cutting it off. Every 5 minutes, he shakes it off his forehead like a wet dog trying to shake off water. The hair is part of what's attractive about him to women, though. For women, he's somewhere between an adorable baby and the male version of Scarlett Johansson circa 2003, back when she was a bodacious, well-coiffed nymph. Bieber may love sports and rap, but he knows how to turn on the charm when he has to. In fact, when he's late to meet me another time, he appears with a fancy candle, a stuffed animal, and a card signed, "Love Me." The O in love is shaped like a heart. "I like all girls," Bieber has said. "I like a girl with a nice smile and who's funny, and as far as looks, my taste is dark hair, but I don't limit myself. I like girls with blonde hair too. I like everything." Until recently, there was a great deal of mystery over Bieber's dating status, but the paparazzi caught him kissing Disney TV star Selena Gomez in St. Lucia. Bieber seems to feel weird about having to hide his girlfriend, and it's clear from the few things that he says about Gomez, always with a guilty look as though he knows somebody is about to rap on his knuckles that he's desperately in love with her. "Justin's absolutely girl crazy," says Braun. "Not that he goes after tons of girls, but if there's a girl that he wants to see and he feels that we're not respecting that, he'll make our lives hell to see her." Bieber says that he knows that some people have sex without love, but says that's not for him either. "I don't think he should have sex with anyone unless he loved them." When asked if he believes in abstinence until marriage, he looks a bit wary. "I think you should just wait for the person you're in love with." It's funny, Bieber has seemed younger than his 16 years all afternoon, but when I start asking him questions about his beliefs, even if he's not well educated, "I hate school," is all he will say on the matter, he transforms into an adult, one with a firm grasp of logic and decision-making. He says he doesn't read the newspaper, isn't sure which political party he would support if he could vote. "I'm not sure about the parties, but whatever they have in Korea, that's bad." And thinks it's possible that the 1969 trip to the moon was a conspiracy because he saw something about that on the internet. But he also nods solemnly when I ask if he's for or against the death penalty. Jury's out on that one for him, and quickly responds when asked if he believes homosexuality is a sin. "It's everyone's own decision to do that," he says. "It doesn't affect me and shouldn't affect anyone else." Bieber is a heartfelt Christian, but he's nervous talking about it and makes sure that I'm a Christian too before he opens up. He says that if he could be one character from the Bible, he would choose Job because he lost everything and stayed faithful to God. He also believes in angels and thinks he might have been touched by one once in the form of a kid at Christian camp who gave him a really good-smelling sweater and then disappeared, never to be seen again. "I feel I have an obligation to plant little seeds with my fans," he says. "I'm not going to tell them you need Jesus, but I will say at the end of my show, God loves you." He also says that he's going to heaven. "It says in the Bible that you go to heaven as long as you have God in your heart and ask for forgiveness of your sins," he says with a smile that could warm the coldest heart. He's definitely against abortion too. "I really don't believe in abortion," he says. "I think an embryo is a human. It's like killing a baby." Even in the case of rape? He says, "Well, I think that's just really sad, but everything happens for a reason. I don't know how that would be a reason." He looks confused. "I guess I haven't been in that position, so I wouldn't be able to judge that." And that's it. Bieber's pretty pro-love. "I don't agree with war either, necessarily," he says. "I think everyone should just get along. I don't understand why people attack. What's the point of killing people? Power? If no one cared about power, then no one would have wars. Canada doesn't go around attacking people." When he's done in the studio, Bieber starts to pilot his Range Rover toward the ESPN zone, but it's closed, so he decides to go to a Dave & Buster's arcade. "I know where it is and how to get there too. Swag," he says. "No one will be there because kids still aren't out of school." Then he affects a cool pose. "I used to freak out at arcades, but now I'm like, whatever." In the arcade, he walks swiftly over to the pool tables, playing a few games at an advanced beginner level, while an overhead TV plays music videos. John Mayer appears with guitar in hand, playing an acoustic version of Free Fallin'. "Hey, I know that song," says Bieber. "That's from Jerry Maguire." Afterward, Bieber stops by his house to pick up his swaggy new toiletry bag from his assistant for all his new adult creams and gels. Then he starts making his way to LA, heading to the airport in an SUV with tinted windows. It's weird to be leaving Atlanta. He wants to see Selena, but LA represents a lot that he doesn't like. Paparazzi, interviews with prying adults, meeting people that want something from him, people projecting their fantasies onto him. "Justin doesn't trust many people anymore," says Braun. "He's much less trusting than he used to be in general. But it's weird," continues Braun, "because Justin trusts the fans. He feels like they know the real him." In the car, Bieber talks for a while in a British accent, says that he wants to play Oliver Twist in his next movie, tells us the title of his next album, Believe, and shows off a chargeable case that he's bought for his iPhone. "You need a new BlackBerry," he says, inspecting mine. "Yours has a ball still. The new ones don't have that, and they're better." The British Bieber turns to Kenny. "At pool, she said something about playing with my balls. Quite funny." Kenny laughs and turns to me with a look on his face that's only partially friendly.
"Hello, I'm Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC, and we're doing a special on older women who like younger boys."
Bieber laughs mildly and then starts fiddling with his two computers, one of which he claims is the only black Mac Air in the world. He balances it on his knees, opening it up with the intent of typing something, but when he realizes that I'm seeing his wallpaper, a picture of him and Selena against an orangey sunset, he hurriedly shuts it. At the airport, Bieber is shuttled through security by a special escort and into a window seat in first class with Braun next to him and the rest of the crew in coach. "I don't mind flying on a regular plane. I don't think I'd want one of my own," he says. "No one can get up out of their seats while we're flying, so it's okay for me." He eats a couple of Twix and an apple, half-heartedly reads a chapter of a book for school, uses the plane's Wi-Fi to iChat, and builds some beats and guitar around the vocals he created in the studio earlier in the day. But once the plane lands in LAX, Kenny calls Braun from coach. The escort who was supposed to meet Bieber just called to tell him that there are paparazzi at the gate. They must have gotten a flight manifest. They're waiting for him. Normally, the Paps wait downstairs by the arrivals, so the fact that they were right outside at the plane's gate freaks Bieber out. He puts on a baseball cap, drawing his blue hoodie over it, and then begins to retreat into his shell. Braun tries making light conversation with him, but his answers start getting shorter, and then, after he grabs his bags and starts walking out, he puts on his sunglasses. He walks as quickly as he can through the airport with cameras after him and rumpled businessmen pulling out their cell phones to take photos for their daughters and the feeling of thousands of eyes on him. This is what has given him his life, but how much longer will it last? "I don't think of myself as powerful," says Bieber. "If anything, my fans are powerful. It's all in their hands. If they don't buy my albums, I go away."